"Ma'am, step aside. This property's under HOA compliance review." That's what they said, loud, smug, like they actually had badges. My wife was just sitting on our porch, quiet lake coffee in hand, and suddenly these strangers are pushing through the gate like they own the place. Fake uniforms, fake authority, real intrusion. She didn't yell, she didn't panic, which in hindsight is what scared me most. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it got personal fast. I wouldn't believe this either if it hadn't happened to us. Curious, have you ever seen something like this where you live? Let me know where you're watching from. I need to know we're not alone. The first knock didn't sound like much, just a dull thud like a neighbor fumbling in the dark. The lake still glowed orange behind our house. I figured maybe someone got lost. Happens sometimes, especially after rain. I set my coffee down slowly. Not fear, just that instinctive quiet that makes you mute the TV, even when it's low. I walked to the window, porch light off. A man stood just past the shadow's average height, dark windbreaker, cheap badge, not a uniform I knew. I glanced at Elena. She'd already closed her book and stood. We didn't speak. The second knock came harder, then pounding rhythmic aggressive. Not, "I need help," more like, "Open up or else." That chill crawled up my spine. "Stay back," I said. Elena moved behind the kitchen island. Calm. My wife used to work federal crisis response. Now she prefers quiet. I cracked the door. "Can I help you?" I asked. The man adjusted his sunglasses odd, since it was nearly dark. "HOA compliance check," he said. "Routine evening sweep." I frowned. "It's almost 8. What kind of HOA check happens now?" He raised a clipboard. "We've had complaints lighting fencing porch fixtures." Another man stepped from the shadows, taller, bulkier, same badge. "This goes smoother if we check around back." "No," I said. Then Elena, "You're trespassing. Leave now before I call real law enforcement." Her voice didn't rise. If anything, it dropped. Cold, final. The first man raised a brow. "We're authorized by Section 9 of the HOA Compliance Directive," he said. "Page 12, paragraph 3, property access for nighttime inspections." I nearly laughed. I'd read that HOA manual back to front when we moved in. It didn't even have 9 sections. "That's not a real clause," I said flatly. "And you don't have legal access to anything." Elena stepped forward now, slow and measured. "If you don't leave," she said, holding up her phone, "you'll be dealing with the sheriff and a federal impersonation charge." The silence that followed was thin electric. The taller man shifted, maybe realizing this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. "You folks sure you want to escalate this?" he asked, squinting past me like he was still sizing up the place. Elena didn't blink. "You already did, the moment you stepped on our porch uninvited." And just like that, it changed. They hesitated just a beat too long. I could see it in the way clipboard guy's eyes darted sideways. Then they stepped back. Not far. Just a half-turn, a shallow retreat. "Fine," the shorter one said. "But this won't reflect well in the next board meeting." Elena crossed her arms. "We're not part of your kangaroo committee, and if you try this again next time, I won't be this polite." They didn't respond, just turned and walked back down the gravel path like nothing happened. But it wasn't nothing. It was a test, a push, and we both knew it wouldn't be the last. We closed the door and I locked it with all 3 bolts. I didn't speak for a while. Elena returned to the kitchen and calmly poured herself water. "They weren't from the HOA," she said finally. "At least not officially." I nodded slowly. "You think they were sent by Karen?" Elena's mouth tightened at the name. "I think Karen wants control, and when she can't get it through policy, she sends puppets." The glass in her hand didn't shake. Mine might have. I'd met Karen twice before. Once at the welcome picnic, where she handed me a pamphlet and said, "We keep standards high here, especially with the new wave of buyers." And again at the mailbox, when she commented on the color of our shutters being non-traditional. She wore pearls to water her garden. She once fined a neighbor for seasonal decoration excess. But this was new. Doorstep intimidation, impersonating inspectors. That wasn't HOA busywork anymore. That was escalation. Later that night, I found Elena scrolling through county records, her laptop glowing faint blue against the dark kitchen walls. No permits, no security budget, no official patrol entries on file. She looked up at me. They made up everything. Probably borrowed those badges from an old costume bin. I sat beside her and sighed. So, we're being targeted by a fantasy militia, Elena didn't smile, by people who believe they're untouchable because no one's ever challenged them. She opened a second tab, legal codes. I didn't know half the terms she was pulling up, but she did. There's precedent, she murmured. Impersonation, coercion. If they come back, we document everything. Every time, from here on out. I nodded, but something still gnawed at me. And what if they push harder next time? Elena didn't hesitate. Then we make sure the law sees it. She clicked save, then closed the laptop with finality. That sound alone felt like a quiet declaration of war. The next morning, we reinforced the locks and ordered 2 outdoor cameras. Elena mounted them herself before lunch, one facing the driveway, one the porch. That afternoon, she casually waved at Karen while pruning our hedges. Karen waved back that tight smile, not quite reaching her eyes. Something was brewing, and she knew we knew. But she didn't know Elena, not really, not what she used to do, not what she still could. By sundown, everything looked normal again. Birds in the trees, water lapping softly, a breeze through the blinds. But beneath it all, we were already different. The illusion had cracked. They'd tried to break our peace, and instead they'd awakened something else. A part of Elena I hadn't seen in years, and a part of me I didn't know was still afraid. That night, as we turned off the porch light, I caught a flash across the lake, just a flicker like glass catching moonlight. Elena didn't even look. They'll come back, she said softly, but next time, we'll be ready. The next morning started like any other. I made coffee. Elena stood by the window watching the lake fog slowly dissolve into the sunlight. Nothing was said, but something felt off, like the air hadn't quite settled from the night before. I flipped through my inbox expecting HOA spam or maybe a neighbor complaint. Nothing. Just quiet. Too quiet. Elena moved to her laptop, keyed in the camera feed, and then froze. What the hell, she muttered. I walked over. The live feed was black. She ran to the monitor, fingers already flying across the settings. Blank. The last recording stopped an hour ago. Just after 4 in the morning, the system had gone offline. Power glitch, I asked. Elena shook her head. Battery backups intact. This was deliberate. She checked the router, still blinking. No network issues. I opened the front door and stepped out barefoot. The cameras were still mounted. Not a scratch. No tampering I could see. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line. Everything looked fine, but it wasn't. We had cloud-based cameras always recording. No local storage, no wires to snip. The only way to kill the stream was to either hack it or jam it. I looked back inside. Elena was already on the phone. Yes. Username Thompson_cabin. We need access logs and timestamps now. Her voice was clipped professional. I knew that tone. She wasn't panicked. She was escalating. I'm alerting state oversight. Now, she said, hanging up and opening a separate laptop we hadn't used since we moved in. I stood by the counter, still trying to process it. The footage. Gone. And not by accident. This wasn't a prank or a squirrel on the line. This was surgical. Intentional. I leaned on the counter, the knot in my stomach tightening. Elena didn't look up. Check the side yard. And look under the planter box. We buried the trail cam last spring. I grabbed my boots and headed outside, heart pounding with every step. I knew what I was looking for, and I prayed we hadn't lost that too. The trail cam was still there, hidden in the soil beneath the fern's lens, tucked under a lip of bark. I lifted it out and turned it over. The red LED was blinking, still alive. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. Back inside, Elena plugged the memory card into her machine. If they jammed the house system, they probably didn't know this existed. We watched together. The footage began normal, wind through trees, raccoons passing through a light drizzle just before midnight. Then at 4:03 movement. 2 figures approached the house, same windbreakers, same posture. One held what looked like a directional antenna pointed directly at the porch. The other, a tablet. Signal jammer, Elena whispered. And a sweeper. Jesus. The taller one moved along the side, tapping at something on the tablet. They mapped our cameras, I said, stunned. They didn't guess. They knew. Elena rewound the footage, frame by frame. The faces weren't visible hoods, up deliberately angled away. But one thing stood out. A patch. On the right shoulder of the second man. HOA Enforcement Unit. Same logo, but this one had a red stripe through it. Elena froze the frame. That's a variant. Wasn't on the guy from last night. I stared. So, there's more than one version, or more than one crew, she replied. Whoever's doing this, they're organized. I felt it then, sharp ice-cold dread. Not nerves, not suspicion, certainty. Someone was targeting us, and they knew what they were doing. HOAs don't send field enforcers, ever. It doesn't matter how tight the rules are, or how obnoxious the board is. Homeowners associations don't fund tactical sweeps. I looked at Elena. We need to go public. She didn't blink, not yet. Let's bait them. Make them come back. I hesitated. You want them to come back? Elena looked at me straight in the eye. Only way we catch them. We record it clean. No masks, no hoods, no deniability. She sounded like a field analyst again. Not a homeowner, not a wife. Later that day, we bought a new motion camera with its own hotspot. It didn't connect to our house network. Separate system encrypted, no shared credentials. Elena mounted it behind the porch beam, blending it with the trim. This one they won't see. And if they jam again, we'll get a signal drop notice. I watched her work, realizing again that she'd done this before. Not here, not with HOA clowns, but in another life, one where screw-ups had higher stakes. That evening she got a call back. State oversight. Elena took the call outside, pacing along the deck. When she came in, her face was grim. Their records show no HOA patrols were authorized, no private security filings, no neighborhood initiatives. She paused. And get this, our HOA isn't even in active compliance. Their registration lapsed 6 months ago. I blinked. Wait, so Karen's running an illegal board? Elena nodded. No legal standing, no authority, nothing. Just a name and some paper threats. I leaned back. So they're not just wrong, they're fake. We spent the rest of the night reviewing every old violation notice, every pamphlet Karen had left in our mailbox. Half were filled with fabricated codes. Section 11 Noise, Regulation Article 7, Garden Obstruction Clause, and my personal favorite Emergency Fence Access Provision. Elena highlighted each one and marked it non-existent. She was building a case, layer by layer, and I was starting to realize how far she planned to take it. At 2 a.m, the new camera pinged. Movement detected. Elena and I shot up at the same time, rushing to the monitor. A black SUV slowly crept past the property. Lights off. It paused for a few seconds, then kept moving. No license plate visible, no decals, just shadows. But it wasn't random. They were checking something. Maybe scanning for signals, maybe watching to see if we'd react. Elena stared at the screen. They're nervous. I asked why. Her reply was instant, because they don't know what else we have. The next morning, a note appeared in our mailbox. No envelope, just a single sheet. We're aware of unauthorized recordings. Stop immediately or enforcement measures will escalate. No name, no HOA letterhead, just typed words and a small symbol at the bottom, an altered HOA crest. This one with a snake wrapped around the pillars. Elena stared at it. They're improvising now, getting sloppy. I said nothing, but inside I was done playing passive. I called every contact I had in the county. Code enforcement, planning, zoning. Not one office had ever interacted with Swan Lake HOA security. In fact, 2 departments had already flagged them as suspicious. I forwarded Elena's video stills, got silence in return. Then an email. 1 line, keep everything. Someone from the state will be in touch. I showed her. She nodded once. It's starting. The tone in her voice sent a chill through me. The next evening we hosted a neighbor, quiet guy, retired engineer, brought over banana bread, and after a long pause admitted, they scared my wife last month. Told her our wind chimes were a safety violation. I looked at Elena. Sound familiar? The man nodded. They showed her a chart. Said decibel spikes could trigger stress in war veterans. I checked the code later. None of it exists. He looked at the floor. We didn't say anything. We didn't want trouble. Elena placed a hand on his. You're not alone, but they are. That night, Elena slipped a flash drive into our safe. Tomorrow, she said, we trigger them. And this time, we record everything. I watched her close the safe and realized whatever came next, we weren't just documenting. We were going to end it. I stared at the ceiling. Silence roared. Elena had fallen asleep, one arm over her face, her breath shallow but steady. I didn't dare close my eyes. My mind kept looping through the footage, the uniforms, the emptiness of our cameras. Every logical explanation unraveled like cheap thread. I rolled out of bed, slowly avoiding every creak in the floorboards. In the dark, I cross-checked names again, every HOA member, every subcommittee, every document I'd stored since we moved in. Something wasn't right. Something was hiding in plain sight. Outside, the wind groaned through the pine. I stood in front of the monitor again, hoping for a glitch or a miracle. Still blank. Nothing recorded since earlier that evening. I opened my laptop, toggled through backups. 0. Elena had installed redundancy on top of redundancy, but all of it gone. Not likely. The only way this happened was if someone inside the system had overridden it, someone with clearance we never gave. A line of sweat ran down my back. I typed harder, faster, digging for signs of tampering. The same man from last night, the tall one with the square jaw and that stiff too-perfect stance, showed up in a background shot from the HO. A barbecue last summer. I zoomed in. Same eyes, same arrogant tilt of the chin. I kept scrolling, found him again during the fire drill in August, standing with clipboard in hand, like he belonged. I hadn't noticed him then. Now, I couldn't unsee him. He'd been lurking in plain sight, one of those quiet ghosts who blends in just enough. I heard soft footsteps behind me. Elena stood at the threshold, her arms folded tight. Her voice was a whisper. Still digging, I nodded without looking up. She moved beside me, catching sight of the screen. That's him. Her tone flattened. The tall guy. Clipboard in August. She didn't need to say more. She'd seen worse, but not at our door. I felt the shift in her, then not fear, but focus. Crisis mode. The switch I'd only seen a handful of times in our marriage. I'm sending his image through state facial ID, she said, already halfway to her encrypted terminal. They can run it against civil defense archives and private contractors. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, like the machine owed her money. He's not HOA. No record in their public staff index. No known consultant contracts either. She paused. So, why is he walking around like he owns the place? My mouth was dry. I didn't have an answer. I didn't even have a theory. We sat in silence for a beat. Then I said, Elena contacted state legal. I called Derek, my lawyer friend. It sounded too small compared to what we were up against, but it was all we had. Derek picked up on the first ring. This early, huh? Must be bad. I filled him in with clipped sentences, expecting skepticism. Instead, he listened. Quiet. Then, forward me what you've got. And keep all communication offline for now. His voice had changed too low or tighter. That didn't help my nerves. The sun crawled through the blinds by the time we finished filing encrypted reports and backing up files onto external drives. Elena brewed coffee without speaking. When she handed me a mug, our fingers brushed. She didn't pull away. We have one chance to stay ahead, she said. We play smart, we play clean, but no more assuming they're just overstepping. She turned toward the window, watching the light hit the gravel. This isn't sloppy, it's surgical. Later that morning, a manila envelope slid under our door. No knock, no footsteps, just the soft swish of paper on hardwood. I picked it up with latex gloves and opened it over the sink, heart thudding. Inside, a printed photo of our backyard, Elena watering the garden, me kneeling beside her fixing the fence. Taken from a high angle like a drone or long-range camera. No note, no demand, just surveillance proof, as if to say, we see you. My stomach turned to concrete. Elena's mouth was tight as she inspected the photo. They want us rattled. This is pressure, not persuasion. I watched her slip the image into a plastic sleeve, then into a sealed evidence folder. We'll get prints later. But this wasn't random. This was targeted. Her words sliced clean through my rising panic. I nodded. They've crossed a line. She gave a bitter smile. They crossed it yesterday. Now they're sprinting past it. That afternoon, I walked the perimeter of our property. Every inch. I spotted a broken branch near the east edge fresh. Bark stripped. Shoe print just barely sunk into the dirt nearby. Not ours. Someone had stood there possibly hours ago, watching us through the trees. I followed the faint trail back toward the access road where tire marks bent against the gravel, too wide for a car, more like an unmarked van. My throat tightened. These people weren't hobbyists. They had structure, routine. I met Elena back at the front steps. She already knew. They've mapped our routine, she said. Timelines, weak points. Last Tuesday, they cut our backup power for 20 minutes. You remember I did now? We'd blamed a squirrel. It was a test run. See how fast we'd respond. See who we'd call. She shook her head, angry now. This isn't overreach. It's an operation. I didn't argue. I couldn't. All I could do was grip the railing hard enough my knuckles turned white. That evening we got a call from Derek. The man in your photos, not military, not contractor, not officially. But he's shown up in cases involving property disputes, forced transfers, and legal intimidation, always one layer removed. He's a fixer. My hand clenched the phone. Who pays him? Derek sighed. That's what I'm working on. But if your HOA's name is on any of these transactions, you've got bigger problems than zoning codes. He paused. Send me your deed, and any HOA amendments you've received in the last year. Elena nodded when I relayed the message. She was already collecting documents. Check for water rights too, she added. If they're aiming for a land grab, it's not just about buildings, it's about control. Her logic tracked. The lakefront nearby had been appraised at over $1 million last year. Someone wanted leverage. Someone wanted bloodless conquest, and we were in their way. As the sun disappeared behind the tree line, I saw Elena setting motion lights manually. We didn't trust automation anymore. I joined her with the second set. We worked in silence side by side, screwing lights into trees like we were hanging lanterns for war. She handed me the wire spools without words, and for the first time since the knocking started, I didn't feel alone, just angry, steady. When night fell, I sat on the porch with a flashlight and a thermos, watching shadows shift across the driveway. Every leaf rustle felt loaded. Every wind gust sounded like boots, but no one came, not yet. In my head, I went over everything we knew, every photo, every silence, every strange glance from neighbors who now avoided us. Whoever was doing this had resources, had silence on their side, but they didn't know one thing. We weren't scared anymore. We were ready, and tomorrow we would knock first. They came again, same fake uniforms, same arrogance. Their boots kicked gravel louder than they needed to, like they wanted us to hear. It was just past 10, the lake was still, and the cicadas had gone quiet, as if they sensed trouble before we did. I had just poured a second glass of wine when the knock came, not a polite tap, but the kind that came with a sneer. Elena didn't flinch. She stood up slowly, set her glass down with care, and moved toward the door like she'd trained for this moment. You're impersonating officers. That's a felony, she said through the door voice, crisp, no room for doubt. I backed up, words stuck. My heart thumped against my ribs like it wanted out. They didn't answer. Just another knock, heavier this time, deliberate. I reached for my phone, hands trembling. I had one bar, maybe two. The signal flickered like a dying candle. Elena glanced at me, one eyebrow raised as if to say, if they breach, you run. They pushed through like it was theirs. No search warrant, no hesitation. The same man from before led the charge, square-jawed and smug, scanning our living room like it owed him something. Step aside, he barked. We have authority under Section 12 of Local Enforcement Guidelines. I didn't move. Elena folded her arms. Section 12 doesn't exist. Neither do you. She was right. These weren't real enforcers, but they acted like they were, and in this quiet corner of nowhere, acting was almost enough. One of them, shorter jittery, fumbled with a tablet. This cabin is under HOA investigation for structural violations, he read. Suspected unpermitted modifications. Emergency inspection authorized. I nearly laughed. We hadn't touched a brick. You're quoting nonsense, Elena said. You step 1 inch further, and I'll press federal charges, the tall one smirked. You talk a lot for someone hiding violations. He took another step forward. That's when I noticed that his badge was plastic. Literally plastic. You could see the injection mold seam. My breath caught. Was this even real? I looked at Elena. She didn't blink. You've got 10 seconds to leave before I call the real sheriff, she said. No bluff, just warning. They didn't care. They started taking pictures, one snapping photos of our kitchen, another pointing at the fireplace. Unsecured flue, one muttered. Possible fire hazard. I wanted to scream. Instead, I grabbed my phone and hit record. Say that again, I asked, voice shaking. On camera. The man turned. Turn that off. No, I said. This is evidence. You're breaking the law. His jaw tightened, but he backed off a step. Just one. That hesitation told me something important. They weren't just thugs. They were trying to avoid a paper trail. Elena, meanwhile, had moved to the bookshelf. Not to grab a book, but to hit the silent alarm button behind the frame. It didn't call the police. It sent a live signal to a private oversight contact we had from her old job. A backup she never mentioned until now. The tablet guy noticed. Hey, what did she just do? Nothing, I said. Just turning on the fireplace you hate so much. But the damage was done. They started backing up fast. "We'll be back with a warrant," the tall one snapped. "Real one next time." Elena stepped forward. "Try it, and next time we won't be alone." They left, slamming the door behind them like petulant kids denied dessert. Gravel scattered as they fled. We stood there listening to the engine roar down the road. I exhaled. What the hell just happened? Elena didn't answer right away. She opened her laptop, pulling up a live connection window. No signal. "They scrambled it," she muttered. "Briefcase jammer low range. They're getting sloppy." "That was sloppy?" I asked. "They nearly ransacked the place." She looked up. "Professionals don't announce themselves with fake law and hollow threats. These people want fear. They want you to panic and leave. They're betting on that." I sat down, still shaking. "But what do they actually want? They're not HOA. They're not cops. So, what's left?" Elena tilted her head. "Control, or whatever sits underneath the HOA now. A front, maybe, for someone trying to consolidate land, buy people out, clear the lakefront." Her voice was flat analytical, but her fingers drummed. That was her tell. She was nervous too. I hadn't seen her like this since the Capitol evacuation in DC, and even then she hadn't flinched. Outside, the night crept back in. The frogs started chirping again. I stared out the window, half expecting a third knock. Nothing, just the wind tapping the shutters. Elena closed her laptop and sat beside me. "We need to go higher," she said. "I'll send footage and notes to my contact at State Oversight. You text Derek." I nodded, pulled out my phone and messaged my old law school buddy. I didn't say much, just need help. Legal threat escalating, possible impersonation. He replied within minutes, on it. Sleep was out of the question. We turned off the lights and sat in the dark side by side. Elena checked the backup drive, confirming the silent alarm triggered a remote data pull. "At least we'll have proof," she said. I nodded. "If anyone believes us." "They will," she replied. "Because next time they knock, they won't be able to run." Her tone wasn't vengeful, just cold, calculated, a promise written in granite. I didn't realize I was gripping her hand until she squeezed mine back. An hour passed, then another. Around 2 a.m., headlights swept across our wall again, but this time they kept driving. Just a car. Or maybe not. We didn't flinch either way. Elena went to the den and started writing pages of notes, times, voice inflections, what each man said. She dated every entry. "This is how we win," she muttered. "Documentation." I watched her work, methodical, relentless. It wasn't just our home on the line. It was her sanity, her name, her damn peace. At dawn, we made coffee and watched the lake. Steam rose off the water like breath from a wounded animal. "How long do you think they've done this?" I asked. Elena didn't answer right away. She reached into the drawer and pulled out a folder marked "Property Line, Original Deed." "Long enough to think they'd never get caught," she finally said. "But they're wrong this time." I sipped my coffee, the taste sharper than usual. "You sure we're not overreacting?" She gave me a look that could stop a riot. "They impersonated law enforcement. That's not paranoia, that's a crime." I walked to the front porch and looked out at the empty road, just gravel and sky. The birds were back, but the tension in my spine wasn't gone. It wouldn't be for a while. Inside, I heard Elena on the phone. Her voice dropped into that tone she only used in formal briefings. I caught only one sentence: "We have a breach pattern, and someone's protecting them." A pause. Then, "Yes, I'm prepared to testify if needed." That's when I knew this wasn't just about us anymore, not just about our house. This was a blueprint, a playbook, something someone had tested on others, maybe quieter neighbors, ones who didn't record, ones who didn't fight back. I looked at our fence, once a harmless boundary. Now it felt like a front line. This wasn't a disagreement with a local board. This was targeted harassment wearing a mask that looked legal until you got close enough to see the cracks. Elena stepped outside, phone still in hand. "Oversight's requesting full footage. I'll upload it now. Derek wants a recorded statement too. We'll do it together." I nodded. "They'll be back," I said. "I know," she replied. "But next time, so will we." The knock came like a demand, not tentative, not polite. 2 sharp slams that made the front door vibrate in its frame. I froze still, gripping the screwdriver from my earlier attempt to fix the patio screen. Elena didn't say anything. She just looked up from her laptop, met my eyes, and walked toward the window. "They're back," she said simply. Her tone wasn't angry. It was surgical, focused, as if she'd already calculated this moment 3 steps ahead. Outside, 3 men stood shoulder to shoulder, same black jackets, same crooked patches stitched just wrong enough to look counterfeit, same leader, Elena murmured, squinting through the glass. But new backup. She didn't wait for my reaction. She stepped to the bookshelf, reached behind a framed photograph, and pressed something I hadn't seen before. A small panel popped open, revealing a thin ID case. She didn't take it out yet, just looked at it like she was asking permission from a past life. The second knock was louder, impatient. We both heard boots shifting on gravel. Elena walked calmly to the door, but didn't open it. "State your purpose," she said through the wood. A pause. Then the voice I recognized from before Swan Lake HOA enforcement. "You're in breach of multiple compliance articles. We have authority to enter and inspect," Elena replied. "Which articles specifically?" The voice hesitated. "Article 12, Section 4. That didn't exist. She knew it. I knew it. She opened the door halfway. The porch light above flickered once, casting harsh yellow streaks across the men's faces. The tall, one-square-jaw clipboard tucked under his arm stepped forward. His eyes scanned our entryway like it was already his. "Step aside," he barked. "We don't have time for games." Elena didn't move. "This is private property," she said, "and you're operating under false authority." Her right hand hovered near her side. Her fingers flexed once. Then slowly she reached into the panel. The badge emerged like a blade, sleek, rectangular, and unmistakably federal. It shimmered under the porch light. Gold embossed seal at the top. Her full name printed in capital letters, Elena R. Moreno, Federal Infrastructure Security Consultant. Below it, authorized access, classified level 3. The laminate caught the light perfectly, casting a ripple of reflected text across the tall man's sunglasses. She didn't shove it in his face. She just held it out calm still like a declaration. "I am a federally certified consultant," she said. "This site is being monitored and recorded. Your entry attempt constitutes unlawful impersonation and trespassing under state and federal code." The shorter man on the left blinked rapidly. He took a half step back. His hand holding a fake citation sheet began to shake visibly. "Is that real?" he muttered. Elena didn't answer. She angled the badge slightly so the seal caught the light again. The gold eagle glinted unmistakable and cold. The third man farther behind started to shift his weight. "We need to go," he said under his breath. The tall man didn't move. His eyes darted not at Elena, but toward the car parked at the end of our gravel path. "You're bluffing," he said. His voice cracked halfway through the word bluffing. Elena raised one brow. "Would you like to explain that to a federal review board?" she asked. "Or shall I contact them for you now?" The badge didn't waver, but the man's voice did. "We were just following up on reported violations," he said quickly, trying to backpedal. His partner tugged at his sleeve. "Let's go." The short one, repeated voice, urgent now. "Let's go, now." They turned without another word. Gravel crunched. Boots slipped. The third man didn't even look back. They reached their vehicle, slammed the doors, and peeled out dust, rising in the cold air like smoke from a failed illusion. Elena didn't move right away. She stood in the doorway for another full minute, watching the taillights disappear into the dark. Then she stepped back, closed the door slowly, and locked both deadbolts with deliberate clicks. She set the badge down on the kitchen counter like it was made of glass. I stared at it. The lettering still glowed faintly under the overhead light. "I've never seen you use that," I said. "I was saving it," she replied, "for exactly this." I picked it up carefully. The surface was cool, heavier than it looked. Not just laminated plastic, but something official, dense with weight and meaning. "What happens now?" I asked. Elena didn't answer right away. She opened her laptop and pulled up the external camera feed. 9:52, she muttered. Footage loop attempted. Again. Same time the car arrived. She clicked open the raw files. They tried to spoof the timestamp, but the thermal backup caught them. I leaned over her shoulder. 2 heat signatures on the side wall. A third one farther back holding what looked like a tablet. "Same group," I said. "They've done this before," Elena nodded. "But now we've got all 3 faces." She hit pause, zoomed in on the frame. The tall one's face was turned just enough, jawline, hairline, nose. Distinct. "That's enough for facial tracking," she said. "I'll run it through federal archives tonight." I swallowed hard. "And if they're tied to someone powerful?" She looked up. Her eyes were steady. "Then they have already made their worst mistake." I watched her upload the footage to an encrypted drive, then 2 more. She labeled the file unauthorized entry, high threat. I sat on the couch, still gripping the edge with my palms. You knew it would come to this, I said. She nodded once. They underestimated me. They always do. Around midnight, a car passed again, slow lights off. Elena didn't blink. She simply picked up the badge and laid it on the windowsill right in view. A warning, a promise, a line they now knew not to cross. My hands were still cold, but my spine felt straighter, because now they weren't just bluffing, and neither were we. The dining room had never looked like this before. Lamp tilted just right, laptop webcam taped dead center. At center, a neutral backdrop of plain curtains behind us. Elena adjusted the camera angle with surgeon-like precision, then exhaled. Her face was unreadable, no smile, no frown, just the same hardened resolve I'd seen back in chapter meetings during her federal days. Ready, I asked. She nodded once. Live in 5. The red light blinked on. And just like that, we were no longer alone. This happened to us. It could happen to you. Elena's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. Calm, direct, anchored. Impersonators broke into our home posing as HOA enforcement. They carried fake badges, fake codes. They erased footage, but they missed something. She tapped the keyboard, and the screen beside her flared to life with grainy infrared footage. 2 silhouettes creeping past our porch, one holding a signal jammer. The chat exploded. What the hell, one viewer typed. They came to our lake last year, wrote another. Elena's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice didn't waver. We've traced their activity to other cabins. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a coordinated effort to intimidate, trespass, and seize property under the false banner of HOA enforcement. She leaned in slightly. And we've reported every detail to federal oversight. Comments rolled in faster. Tag the sheriff. My HOA pulled this in June. Then, oh my God, that's my neighbor in the hoodie. Elena blinked once, but her gaze didn't leave the camera. Her face hardened when she played the clip of the fake enforcers kicking gravel, barging through the door, yelling about Article 12. Elena let the audio run, then paused it at the frame where her voice calmly said, "You're impersonating officers. That's a felony." For a beat she didn't speak, just looked into the lens eyes like sharpened steel. "We were terrified," she said, but terror didn't stop us. Documentation did. My phone buzzed. A text, "I'm outside. I saw the stream. I turned." Someone was knocking on our front door. It was Linda, the retired art teacher from 2 cabins down. She held up her phone live stream, still playing. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one." Elena nodded, didn't break rhythm. "We'll finish in a minute," she said softly, then turned back to the camera. "For those asking, yes, we've shared all footage with state-level investigators. This isn't vigilante justice. This is accountability. You deserve transparency. You deserve safety." The chat scrolled, "Where can we send our stories?" For the next 5 minutes, Elena laid out every falsified notice, every fake clause, every HOA letterhead that never matched county records. She showed timestamps, screen recordings, the HOA's registration lapse date. "They don't exist legally," she said. "They've been operating on fear and silence. We're ending both." A comment burst through, "I live 2 states away. Same logo, same tactics." Elena's brow furrowed slightly. She copied the username silently. Her hands were steady, but her eyes, they burned now. A loud ping came from her phone. She read the alert, then spoke. "We just received a cease and desist email from a firm claiming defamation." She held up the screen. "Here it is. No signature, no client name. They're bluffing." Her lips curled just barely. Not a smirk, not satisfaction, just precision. "We won't take this down. In fact, this is only the beginning." A message popped up. "Elena, Channel 5 is trying to reach you." Then another, "Go National." "This is huge." She clicked end stream. The silence afterward felt thick, like someone had cut the air with wire. We didn't speak for a moment. Then the phone rang. Elena answered. "Yes, speaking." Her posture shifted again, shoulders squaring, jaw firming. "Yes, we'll send all footage. Yes, I'm willing to go on record." It was a Denver journalist. Another call beeped in. "That's county legal," she whispered to me. She was already moving to her laptop, multitasking without hesitation. Outside, an SUV rolled by slowly. No lights, no plates. I stepped to the window, scribbled the details. "Same make, same route," I murmured. Elena didn't flinch. "Let them come," she said, eyes locked on her screen. We're backed up on 3 drives now. Cloud redundancy set. If they unplug us, the footage uploads automatically after 72 hours. Comments still pinged her inbox. You saved my family. I thought I was crazy, and they tried to find me for aggressive porch seating. Thank you for this. That night, she printed every new comment, every threat, every note of support. Physical copy, she explained, in case they scrubbed the net. I watched her slide them into labeled folders, red, blue, green, like she'd done in debriefings 1,000 times before. She paused at one handwritten comment from a neighbor. You stood up for all of us. Her expression shifted, a flicker of something raw, but then it was gone. She filed it like a receipt. We turned the lights off early and sat in the dark again, but something had changed. We weren't hiding anymore. We were holding ground. Elena rested her hand over mine on the table. They won't stop, she said, but now they know we won't either. A car backfired in the distance. Neither of us flinched. The cabin felt like a fortress now, not because of locks or lights, but because truth had finally filled every crack. By morning, the video had over 80,000 views. The HOA's official page was locked down, their contact form disabled. Someone had tried to post a rebuttal, but too late. Elena's inbox held interview requests, neighbor testimonies, legal offers. One stood out, a civil attorney specializing in HOA overreach. His subject line read, "Time to bring them down. No charge." Elena opened it, read it twice, then turned to me and said, "Let's make this official." And as we stepped onto the porch, fresh air cool against our faces, I saw it across the road taped to a mailbox, a handwritten sign, "We believe you." She smiled. For the first time in days, she smiled. By day's end, the board disowned them, publicly. No prepared statements. Just a hasty announcement on their website. The individuals involved acted independently and without board approval. Elena read it aloud with a flat laugh. Took them long enough. No apology. No accountability. Just a slow retreat into legal language, hoping no one looked too closely. But people were already digging. Real officers arrived fast. Took us seriously. They watched the videos, copied our drives, asked direct questions. The lead detective, a wide-shouldered woman with a notepad and zero patience, said, "These aren't HOA disputes. This is criminal." One of the fake enforcers had a prior record in Nevada. Another had ties to a dissolved security company. Suddenly it wasn't about bylaws, it was about prison. Elena handed over a stack of documents. Here's everything they threatened us with. Paper trails, signed letters, voice memos. The detective flipped through them with raised eyebrows. "You two built a case better than half my unit." I watched Elena's jaw tighten. This wasn't new to her, but it was personal. I saw it in the way she didn't blink when listing every infraction. Every lie. Word spread fast. The video hit 100,000 views by nightfall. Local papers ran the story. Regional ones picked it up next. Then a podcast. Cabin Siege. How a couple fought HOA tyranny. I didn't listen. I already knew how it sounded from the inside, but I saw the headlines, heard the murmurs from people who used to look away. They weren't anymore. Someone left a letter in our mailbox. No name, just a handwritten note. "Thank you for showing the rest of us how." And under that, a phone number. Elena called it without hesitating. It belonged to a woman named Carrie, whose cabin had been seized through forged fines. She'd moved out of fear, but now she wanted to return. "If they're falling," she said, "I want my place back." A town meeting was called by the residents, not the HOA, folding chairs in the church basement. No microphones, no scripts, just raw, furious people sharing stories. Elena stood at the back until someone asked her to speak. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, "This started with a gate camera and ended with us fearing for our lives. That's not a neighborhood. That's control." People clapped, then others stood. Stories spilled out about threats, fines, fake citations, trespassing. No one interrupted. I didn't speak. I just sat there stunned by how fast silence could break once someone cracked the first stone. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about 100 others who'd kept quiet. That quiet was dead now, and something louder had taken its place. The next morning, 2 of the men were arrested. The third fled. The sheriff confirmed it on the scanner. Vehicle found abandoned south of county line. Suspect on foot. I looked at Elena. She was already loading a battery into her trail camera, just in case she said. Her hand brushed mine. It was steady. After everything, still steady. I didn't know how she did it. We replaced the lock on the gate again, stronger this time. Elena mounted a floodlight. I reinforced the cabin's rear door with metal brackets. We didn't feel safe, but we weren't afraid. There's a difference. Fear is silence. This was awareness. We left a sign by the driveway, all activity recorded. Trespassers will be prosecuted. And underneath it, small and handwritten, we're still here. A local lawyer reached out, offered to represent us pro bono, said we had a case for damages. Elena took his card, nodded. We'll think about it. She hadn't decided if she wanted revenge closure or just distance. I wasn't sure either. Part of me wanted to leave it all behind, but part of me wanted to make sure no one else would ever go through what we had. That night we sat on the porch. No screens, no words, just the sound of wind moving through pine and the slow creak of old wood under our feet. A deer wandered by, paused, and stared at us, then kept moving. Nature had a way of ignoring human chaos, of reminding you that life keeps going even after violence, even after betrayal. One by one, neighbors came. Some just waved from the road. Others brought coffee, firewood, or nothing at all but their stories. One man, gray-bearded with a limp, said, "I almost sold my place. Thought I was crazy for thinking something was off. You proved I wasn't." He didn't stay long, but I won't forget the way he smiled as he left. Carrie returned to her cabin the following week. We helped her clean out the junk they had left behind. Broken lamps, overturned chairs, old paperwork stuffed into drawers. She found a photo of her kids taped behind a mirror. She cried silently. Elena stood with her, not saying anything, just holding a trash bag open until the moment passed. Sometimes presence is more powerful than words. The fake citations were voided. The county started an inquiry into HOA operations across several neighborhoods. Other boards panicked. Emails leaked. One HOA president resigned. Another called the live stream dangerous misinformation on local news and was booed off the stage. The tide was shifting, not in a wave, but in steady grinding inches, just enough to push back. We didn't throw a party, no victory photos, just lived, cleaned gutters, fixed the fence, tended tomatoes like they mattered more than court papers. Maybe they did. Maybe healing is quiet. Elena planted rosemary by the porch, said it kept snakes away. I knew she meant people. When the last article faded, we didn't chase the noise. Closed the laptop, walked to the lake, no speeches, just silence. She leaned on my shoulder. So, what now? I didn't know, but we were still here. Sometimes that's enough. Now we know how far they'll go and how far we'll push back. The lake shimmered silver, quiet again, for now. I still don't know what scared them more, the badge or that she never raised her voice. Either way, they backed off. If anything like this ever happened to you, drop a comment. Maybe sub to QA Stories. Stay safe. I mean that.
QA Stories thanks you for hanging out today. Don't forget to binge a few more. Trust us, you'll be hooked.